Could you please welcome Diego to the stage?
So yeah, I'm after the ChatGPT talk, so I don't know if I'm going to be that interesting. But this is one of my favorite topics: is animation on the web. So some of you may be familiar with the usual approaches of animation in the web. Ever since CSS got animation capabilities, it's one of the best way to do it. But it's not as powerful as a JavaScript solution. So to talk about GSAP, I'm just going to roll this animation back to the end because I didn't made any slides. But this can explain what GSAP is better than anybody. I'm just going to do a reaction video over the whole thing. So why GSAP? GreenSock Animation Platform is a JavaScript animation library, super performant. It also handles the cross-browsing compatibility for you, so you don't have to worry about that too much. It handles the responsiveness. You can animate everything, scale, rotation, and movement independently. That's something you cannot do in CSS. In CSS, you define a transition for opacity and translation in the same property, but you cannot make those two animate at different rates through traditional means. With GSAP, you can do that. You can animate anything in JavaScript, any object, and even some things such as SVG paths and motion along the path, which we're going to see a little bit. And then you have total control over the course of the animations. You can pause them, play them, reverse them, make them go slow-mo, make them back, tween a sequence, and you can even animate these parameters. So you can even animate the speed of an animation. It's very meta. And the new standard of HTML5 animation, I mean, it's been so for a while. If you've seen an award site, chances are it uses GSAP. There's some particularities to the model and how it's made sustainable. It's been for ages, and it's not completely free. You can use it, and most cases are free. But if you use it in an application that charges a subscription, you need a commercial license. But there are very few cases where you actually need the subscription license. So they make their money by selling you plugins to make some of the more complex effects a little bit more manageable. So having gone through that, I'm going to do a play-by-play commentary on how you would approach animation such as what you're going to see here. So I wanted a logo for a new website that I'm building for myself, so I don't have a portfolio. And I started to think about it like a year ago and never built it. But I built the logo, I built the animation. It looks something like this. It has a path animation, some letter animation. You can see it play all over again. And there's a few things going on, and I'm going to do a play-by-play commentary on how you would build something like this. I'm going to use this next code pen here. And in this case, one thing you can do is control the progress of the animation with basically anything. And to explain this here, I'm controlling it with the scroll. So this markers you see here are debug utilities of the library. And as soon as this green thing touches the scroller start, the animation will start playing. And with the scroll bar, it starts going, so I can go back, go forward. And when the red end marker touches the scroll end, I can configure where they stand in the page. The whole timeline will stop. So let's go a little bit play-by-play, how something like this could be achieved. So first, let's take a look at what the HTML sort of looks like. It's very generic. I have a couple of panel divs, and they're just white space to generate scroll in the page. So they're 100 view heights. They basically take the whole screen. And they're just there to generate enough scrolling space so that I can control the animation with it. And then the interesting bit is within this logo wave div, if I open it up, it's going to be a little bit of a mess of SVG. So there's a bunch of paths, but the good thing about SVG is that it's essentially HTML. You can get references through it, through class names. You can target it with CSS. You can target it with JavaScript. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. That's enough for the HTML. The CSS, very simple as well. I'm just setting generic styling, centering things, putting display flags here and there, telling it, oh yeah, some of your strokes are yellow, some of your fills are 3px, etc., etc. That's very simple. Now the JS, it's also going to be very simple, but we're going to see play by play. So first, I registered the two paid plugins. The thing about the paid plugins is that you cannot use them outside of CodePen if you don't have a membership of that. I think that's a very good model because this has enabled GreenSock to basically be at the top of features and performance for animations in the web for ages, while some other projects have been abandoned because people need money, right? So I kind of like how they've been at the forefront of sustainability in there's not open source tools, but it's essentially free for most users. So two plugins, motion path plugin, because I want to animate this little yellow dot that you see here. I want to animate it along the path. These are two different animations. Once I'm showing the SPG sort of heartbeat path, I'm showing it, that's one thing, and then I'm moving that yellow dot over the path. So that's another bit of animation. To achieve that motion path plugin, and then scroll trigger is what enables me to just connect that through the scroll without much hassle. So details to figure out here, this animation is composed of several different animations. First, you see the animation of the path, as I said. At the same time, the dot is slowly appearing and animating along the path. And it overlaps, which is interesting. As I'm about to get to the end of that animation, but not completely through, the letters start to appear. So it starts with a bit of overlap. Now try controlling that with CSS. There you're in a bunch of, it's a hell of delays. You can make it happen, but it's just gonna be a little bit laborious. So play-by-play commentary, let's see. This is as far as it goes. So first, I create a timeline. And a timeline is a container for a series of tweens. A tween is telling a property animate from this position to that position over a course of time with certain parameters. So I create a timeline and I tell it in the sort of configuration options, scroll trigger, it's going to trigger a logo wave, markers true. Logo wave is the class name. And I'm going to tell it from the top of the element, 30% over the top of the web, that's where it's going to start. It's going to end at the bottom. So this is the bottom of the original logo wave element, and that's how it's going to end. And it pulls, because I didn't give it a second parameter, it's going to end at the very top of the page. You can do a lot more with these markers, but this is just a very sort of easy example to get started. I'm going to tell it it's crop true so that the scroll has a little bit of time to catch up and it's smoothed out. Otherwise, it's going to be one-to-one to your scroll. And if you have one of these old scroll wheels that are very sequential or very step, the animation is going to feel janky. So with the scrub, it sort of takes care of that easing for you. Makes it look a little bit nicer. Pin is what makes the animation, this element is scrolling, but if you see the element, while the animation is taking place, it's staying put. It's staying there. That's because of this pin parameter. And finally, I just told it pin space false because usually pin elements will have a little bit of extra padding at the bottom by the library to handle some case. But in this case, I just wanted one element trying to the center. All right, so we set the timeline. The whole container is ready. We're gonna start setting some defaults. GSAP.set is a tween that it's immediate, so it happens straight away. And I'm setting some things to alpha 0. The dot starts at alpha 0 because we saw that when it appears, it just doesn't appear out of the blue. It just starts slowly appearing. And also the transform origin of each of the paths, I set it to bottom center so that when it animates, each letter comes in from the bottom and the center. Otherwise, it'll be from the top left. Then we start, the TL is the timeline. So you start calling methods to it. From is a very good method because it tells you from that position, animate from that position. So draw SVG 0 is, I didn't register here, but that's the draw SVG plugin. And that's what allows me to animate this growing line here. You tell it from 0, which is completely hidden, up until basically 100%, which is the default state. So it starts from 0, and that's going to be over 2 seconds. And you can tell it at easing. So the easing is signed dot out, and that just sort of smooths the rate of change of the application. Now, the other tween we're going to do is on the dot, we're going to make it appear now because it's from alpha 0, so now that's a 2, opacity 1, and that's going to happen over 0.7 seconds. And now this parameter, it's the position parameter, and it's a very special parameter because it allows you to tell each tween how it behaves in regards of other animations in the timeline. This character tells it this tween will start at the same time as the one before, so not after. It will not wait. So here I'll run again because I messed it up by clicking. I'll have a click element, so let's have that recompute again. All right. So you'll notice that appearance animation on the dot starts to happen at the same time as the line draw call, and that's achieved with this position parameter. If I hadn't done that, it will wait until the whole path animation is over and then do it. So this is how you overlap them. I also have the motion of that dot. It's a CCSA motion path, and you give it an ID to an SVG path, which is basically a copy of this very same path you're seeing here. And that's how you make it move along the same drawing, the same drawing or drawing of the line. Now, an interesting thing is that that also is set to overlap to the one above, which overlaps to the one above. So these three are in sync. And this duration is the very same as this one, and also it has the same easing, which guarantees that it will move at the same rate. So pretty easy over there. And then, so that takes care of the drawing of the animation. Let's take a look at the letters. And oh yeah, by the way, at the end, I'm telling the dot to disappear. And the dot is disappearing, and this is another use of the position parameter. You can tell it minus equals 0.5, so it will overlap on the previous tween by 0.5 seconds. So it wouldn't go all the way to the start of the tween, like this would do, but it'll just sort of slightly overlap so that it starts fading away just before it's going to reach the end, and not after it has reached the end. So we're almost through. After, we're going to animate the letters, and I have a bunch of paths inside groups that are called legend. I'm going to tell it the duration of that tween is going to be 0.7 seconds. That's the whole thing, the whole letter is appearing. It's going to animate from alpha 0. So the default is alpha 1. So it will set it as alpha 0 at the beginning of the whole timeline, and it will animate from that. And also from Y5. So that's why it comes a little bit from the bottom there. And also, at the same time, from scale 0. I could have done a different tween for the scale so that it animates a different rate, but I kind of left it like that because it was a cool effect. And it also has a little bit of ease. The expo is, there's an ease visualizer in the green side, the documentation, where you can see how the feel of each of these eases are, so you can pick the one that's best for your use case. And this is the parameter stagger, because path, this selector will select multiple elements. And each animation is going to be offsetted from each other by 0.07 seconds. So that's what makes it not all of these letters come at the same time. And I also want this tween, the one from the letters, to start happening before the previous one has finished. And that's that kind of type control that you don't get with CSS libraries. And just the ease of configuration, I don't think has been matched by a lot of things. But anyway, at the end, after the whole tween before it has pulled through, I'm not overlapping the tween anymore. I'm just letting everything finish, and then moving everything to the right by some amount, opacity 0 as well, scale 0, so that it has that nice fade effect. And it has that expo easing, which I think gives it a little bit of extra kick. The duration of that is going to be 1 second. And then if I click, the timeline will restart. But in this case, it's controlled, so that's what I'm doing here. So in this case, it's controlled by the scroll, but if I play the same timeline again without the control of the scroll, it's going to be a little bit janky. And you either want to have your animations control either like they play by themselves, as you see here, or they're being scrubbed by a certain element. So you can make that scrub be a slider, or you can make it be the scroll. So you have a very much tight control over that. But having a little bit of perhaps extra time for one more thing. The thing is about animation in the browser is that the browser is perpetually re-rendering when you change the DOM and when you change the style string. So it already has a game loop, per se, that the browser does. But I want to show you that you don't necessarily need to be in a browser environment. So here I have this SydJS demo that I've been playing with. And you can animate essentially any property of any. It doesn't have to be DOM elements. You can animate 3D stuff. So the animation of the cylinders over there, the scale of the cylinders and their position is being animated by GreenSock. It's not within a timeline. And that bit of code is a couple of lines that I'll show you in a bit. I'm getting through all of this SydJS code. This is it. So I'm looping through all of the cylinders, right? But I'm telling, all right, cylinder scale only in set, because it's all of the cylinders are within a plane. So I'm scaling in set to make them bigger, because animating vertices is a little bit more involved. So that's how it makes it longer. And I'm also animating the position, but to get the right position, I do need to calculate the X and Y with a little bit of trick. And the duration of it. So you can use it to animate any JavaScript object. And even some things that are not JavaScript objects, like you saw in the previous example with the SVG paths. And yeah, I hope I piqued your interest. I hope you play with it. You can play with all of the paid stuff on CodePen for free. And if you like it and if you use it for work, like all of these award sites you see somehow are using it, so you start making money with that, I don't know, why not support them? And that's